I am not saying this to trash doctors. I am a doctor. Without them even knowing it, they are a machine trained to find something wrong with you. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Spirit. Quick story. One of the greatest loves of my life is my grandma Casilda. I used to roll my eyes at Grandma Casilda for something she used to say when I was a medical student. She used to say, I don't go to doctors because doctors always find something wrong. You go to see them feeling fine, and then they start looking and digging until they find something wrong, and you leave feeling sick. Why do doctors enjoy so much finding what's wrong with you? Do you get a golden star every time you find something wrong? And it took me many years to realize she was right. There is a reward that comes from finding what's wrong with patients. So, the short story, the medical system is geared toward illness, not toward health. And I'm not the first person who's saying this. To explain what I mean, I need to tell you about two concepts. First of all, the fear of malpractice lawsuits. Here, I invite you to have some compassion for doctors. Doctors are terrified of being sued, not only for the medical license and financial consequences, but because doctors, we are all self-flagellators. We are terrified of hurting people accidentally. So when we are in front of a patient, we don't leave any stone unturned. What if I'm missing something? Let's do another scan. Let's do another MRI. The wisest doctors who trained me told me there is a reason why we don't do wide screenings on everybody. We don't tell people, I'm going to scan you from head to toe and see if you have a cancer inside. No, because more often than not, we find things that are irrelevant. A little spot, scar in the lung, a little granuloma in the kidney or liver that send the patient into a panic, send us chasing biopsies, invasive procedures, when it's something that we shouldn't have found in the first place. I heard a pretty disturbing story about a friend of mine who worked at an emergency room / urgent care. The supervisors were telling the physicians, you need to tell everybody that the condition is serious. If we tell them not to worry about, they don't take care of themselves, and if something goes wrong, they come back and sue us. You need to scare people. You need to tell them you're really sick. And if you caught my last video, one of the worst things we can ever do is to give someone a label of being sick and then cast a spell on them. But there is something more, even deeper. The sicker the patient is, the more diagnosis the patients have, the better it looks in my note for me to bill Medicare more. To explain what I mean, I need to tell you about two concepts: the International Classification of Diseases, or ICD, and the Medicare Physician Fee Schedule. Let's start with the first one, the ICD. This is a global standard for health information maintained by the World Health Organization. In 2022, medicine changed to the ICD-11s, but many places are still using the ICD-10. The ICDs are basically codes made with letters and words to summarize in a very short way the computer can understand what your diagnosis is. So instead of saying that someone has an iron deficiency anemia, the biller enters the ICD-11 code, for example, 3800.0. And you can say, that sounds reductionistic. So the illness that is eroding my peace of mind, you are oversimplifying it. But doctors need to comply with those in order to bill. And this is what's important for you to know. A doctor cannot submit a bill to an insurance company, especially not Medicare, without first entering this code that tells you what is wrong with this patient. The original version of the ICDs created by the World Health Organization had over 14,000 codes. But Americans like to live large. The American system has expanded, and the US health system has over 85,000 ICD codes. But guess what? Only a few hundred of those codes are about health. Most of those are about screening for illnesses. Did you get your colonoscopy? Did you get your mammogram? Some of them are about preventing illness. So we're still thinking about illness. Only a handful of them are intended for people who are healthy and just having a regular checkup with their doctors. So take that in for a moment. 85,000 codes, and only a handful of them are devoted to health. The overwhelming majority of them are devoted to illness. Then let's take that to the following step, the Medicare physician fee schedule. This is another system of numbers that tells the computer how complex the case was. It makes sense at first. The sicker the patient is, the more effort it will require from the doctor, and the more the doctor should be compensated, right? Well, let's look at this in a different way. As of my recent search, a family practitioner who is doing a wellness physical examination in a healthy person, counsel them on healthy diets, trying to convince them to exercise. That extensive visit, Medicare was paying in Florida at around $128. But let's say that that patient ended up with a heart attack. If the patient stayed in the hospital 1 week, which is not an unreasonable stay, the cardiologist who goes see that patient in the hospital got paid $1,000 for helping fix the mess, while the doctor who's trying to prevent the mess, trying to keep you healthy, was paid almost a tenth of that. Immediately that rings a bell that the system is designed wrong, and I'm not the first person saying this. We should be focusing much more of our resources into preventing illness than correcting it, and we are not doing it. But also, think about the bias. If you are trained over and over to know that the sicker the patient is, the more you get paid, it is impossible not to want to look for illness every time you see a patient. And I'm not saying the doctors are lying. I'm not saying they're making it up. It's a little dopamine hit that rings when you say, "Ooh, I found another diagnosis." This has nothing to do about the moral quality of doctors. I am guilty of collecting diagnoses myself. When I was a hematologist oncologist, I could have said this patient has a myelodysplastic syndrome, but I felt obligated to also add with thrombocytopenia, with leukopenia, things that all mean the same, a condition of the bone marrow, but that I felt obligated to prove my worth and say this patient is sick, without maybe thinking about the effect that had in that patient when he or she read their list of diagnoses and probably received that magic spell, "I'm a sick person." So yes, there is some form of unconscious financial bias that may be at play as doctors collect more and more diagnostic codes. And I want to say this one more time. I am not saying this to trash doctors. I am a doctor. I am not saying that doctors who do this are immoral or are greedy. I'm saying our brains are wired to work like this, and this becomes a blind spot. I consider this similar to the blind spot of doctors who used to say, "Smoking is good for you." Sometime in the future, we will slap our foreheads and we won't be able to believe that we were doing it. But I also compare this to a moral blind spot, like when the founding fathers said so beautifully that all men were created equal, but it didn't occur to them they were not even talking about women's rights, and many of them were slave owners. Conclusions. The healthcare system is geared toward illness, not health. When you go see a doctor, unconsciously, without them even knowing it, they are a machine trained to find something wrong with you. And as we said in the previous video, you don't want anybody to steal away your identity of a healthy person and stick a label of illness on you. Number 2, doctors are not evil, they are human. They have been trained to believe that the safest thing for them, for their financial stability, for their practice safety, for their liability safety, is to be diligent and find wrong things with you. So what can you do about it? And by the way, if this conversation has helped you, please consider sharing it with someone you care for. Join the conversation. Has any of this ever happened to you? How are you dealing with the labels the healthcare system is trying to stick on you? Tell me what other topics you would like me to discuss in the future, and consider subscribing so you can be notified as we continue tackling this question. So, what can you do about it? Dare to doubt and challenge your labels. And to bypass some of that bias doctors have, I have two tools that I'm going to share with you. You add to that the secret ingredient, the magic sauce, the magic words that will help any doctor give you an honest opinion.
Dios te bendiga y sigue hacia adelante.